Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for participating in our talk tonight. The title is Coping with Corona, Helping Ourselves, Helping Our Children. We have the great zchus and privilege to have with us the Zahava Farbman. All my principal friends, all my friends who are Manalim in schools, heads of summer camps, anyone who works with people has Mrs. Farbman's number, because chas v'chalila, if we have to deal with any crisis, I don't know how Hashem gives her the koyach to be able to do all this, but she's always available to come in to coach us, to myself, staff, speaking to the children. She's really remarkable, and it's a real zchus to have her here. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk to us and help us through this than she. So Zahava Farbman is a veteran traumatologist. She serves as Associate Director of Project Chai, the Crisis Intervention, Trauma and Bereavement Department of Chai Lifeline, where she focuses on helping families and communities locally, nationally, and internationally prepare for and respond to the full range of crisis, trauma, and tragedies. She's an adjunct professor at the Wurzweiler School of Social Work, authored and presented papers across the nation in her area of expertise, and is widely recognized as the go-to professional in responding to crisis in the Jewish community. I did not mention that Zahava's husband, Seth, was in my very first class when I first started teaching in Tar Semis in 1982. He was a great kid then. He really, honestly, Zahava, he really was. He was a wonderful, wonderful Talmud. And it's a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for giving of your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi Horowitz. And I could go on, but I think the full hour would be taken up for, all of Rabbi Horowitz's accolades. And I think I will just suffice it to say that just Shakoach for all of your avodas hakodesh, and ashracha for holding up the world in so many ways. And I'm really humbled and honored to be asked to join in some small way in your avodas hakodesh tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So what can I tell you? To be here with you tonight, I'm sitting in my home in Woodmere, and you, wherever you're sitting, I know Rabbi Horowitz is in Muncie, but wherever we are, we're together. I've been doing this work. Hashem has put me in a very unique position in this world, and I've been doing this crisis, trauma, and bereavement work for about 20 years. And I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of presentations, interventions, and trainings. And as much as my heart is broken when another Yid's heart is broken, and as much as I am in pain when another Jew is in pain, but for all intents and purposes, I'm on the other side of the table. And for the very first time, we're facing an unprecedented event. We are all going through the same crisis. Ki ish echad b'lev echad. And we're all in this together. In the very beginning of the coronavirus, I had a call with some of our volunteers. In my department, we have a crisis hotline that operates 24 hours, 6 days a week. And they asked me, they were like, we need to regroup. They said, for the very first time, those of us answering that crisis hotline are going through the same exact crisis as the people calling the crisis hotline. And I very much identify with the words of Hashem when he says to us, Imo anochi batzara. And we say every morning in the Akedah, B'chol tzar tam lo sar. And that first Shabbos, when so many Rabbanim across the country, across the world, had to close their doors to the shul for the first time, so Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg in Boca Raton, Florida, sent a video message to his congregation. And he said that in that week's Parsha, it said, B'shabtosai tishmaru. And he asked the question, why the double, where's the two Shabbosim? So you could say Zachar v'Shamar, but he said on that first Shabbos, he said there are two types of Shabboses. It's a weird word, right? He said that there's the one type of Shabbos where you come to shul and you daven with a kehillah, and you daven, you hear the beautiful, tefillos of the chazan, and you read Kriyas HaTorah with the leaning, and maybe you go to Kiddush afterwards, and you see your friends, and, you go home with your family, and there's that one type of Shabbos. And then there's this other type of Shabbos where you're just home with your family, and it's up to you to make this Levitic, fire dick type of atmosphere, and it's a new reality type of Shabbos. And I would like to suggest to you tonight that it's not just the Shabbos of our new reality. It's everything. Everything has changed. It's Shabbos Osai. It's our new roles as parents. It's our roles as husbands and wives have changed. It's our jobs, are totally different. It's the way we go to the supermarket. It's our not going to simchas. It's our financial situations has changed. It's our perspective on illness, on death, on our life, on our time alone with God. Everything has changed from A to Z is the new reality. Shabbos Osai Tishmaru. Everything that I'm going to say to you tonight applies to children and adults. Everything that we are living through, and what we are living through, is trauma. A constant catastrophic trauma. And what is a trauma? Trauma is something that we have no prior experience to. And at this point, it's a constant trauma. And at this point, unfortunately, it's a catastrophic trauma. And there's so much unknown, and there's so much uncertainty still. In the beginning, it was the unknown about the virus, and then it was the unknown about the isolation and the quarantine and the rules. And then it's become the unknown about the illness and how many people have gotten sick, are getting sick. And then Hashem Yerachem, it was the unknown about the deaths surrounding us. And then there are so many unanswered questions, and that alone causes a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress. When we read storybooks to our children and we don't finish them, there's no ending. That causes anxiety for the children. And we are in the middle of a scary story. The Ezras Hashem Yisbarach, with the help of God, we know there's going to be a happy ending. But right now, we're in the middle of that story, and that causes a lot of anxiety and stress. For children and adults, on any good day, we thrive on consistency, structure, routine, familiar, comfortable, safe place. And so much of that has been taken away. We supplement, yes, and we are, doing a good job at supplementing. But that alone, that taking away of what we know, of what we are familiar with, that also heightens our anxiety and stress. I heard from my dear friend and colleague, Dr. David Pelkovitz, that once we accept our loss of control and our inherent vulnerability, which, by the way, is a perfect opportunity for us to work on our emuna and bitachon, but once we accept our loss of control and our inherent vulnerability, consciously or subconsciously, then we automatically become more capable with dealing with the anxiety of the unknown. And that's an important starting point. Tonight, I would like to offer you a framework that I've developed through my years of working in this unique work that I use in very, very, a lot of different types of situations. And tonight we're going to plug in the details of this coronavirus situation that we find ourselves in. It's a 3-step process: educate, validate, reassure, reframe, and express, empower. The first is educate. Now, don't worry, I am not going to do another education on the coronavirus. We've all had quite enough of that from the doctors and the Hatzalah and the, Rabbanim, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing I will make sure is to remind you is to, keep up with the facts and not the rumors. And when it comes to the children, is to be constantly checking in with the children and to find out what they know. You want to hear from them what they know, and to be updating them, on their level. I remember very clearly, whatever it was a few weeks ago, everything right now is kind of a blur, but the conversation that I had with my children when I had to kind of shift gears with them, in the very beginning, the conversation was, it's like the flu, we're just kind of separating because it's contagious and to protect other people. And then, you know, when things became much more serious, and my kids hear a lot because of my work, you know, I had to sit down with them and, you know, switch gears. I didn't want them to think I was lying to them. I want to keep that trust and communication open. And it was also a good opportunity to bring in hashkafa and to show them, you see, like, nobody knows. Nobody knew what they were talking about at the beginning. And things change, and things are changing every day. And if there's one thing that this coronavirus is teaching us, Rak Hashem. Rak Hashem. Only Hashem knows. So just to keep on checking in with those kids, you know, having those family conversations is so important. Next is validate. Validation is the first and most important step in this entire process. For yourself, for your spouse, for your friends, and of course, for your children. And we are validating the isolation, the financial losses, the anxiety, the sickness, the death, the fear. We're validating it all. There is no right way, and there is no wrong way to feel, to think, to cope, to react to any crisis, trauma, or tragedy. Certainly not one of this magnitude that we are experiencing now. There is no right way and there is no wrong way. Viktor Frankl was a famous psychiatrist. He himself lived through Auschwitz, and he coined the phrase, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is totally normal. Again, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is totally normal. Those who have heard me speak before know that my go-to is the Torah. People ask me all the time, how do you do what you do? How do you do what you do? My coping mechanism is the Torah. The Torah is not just a rule book. It's not just a history book, but the Torah is the first psychology book. And all the feelings, all the emotions, all the experiences that we go through are in the Torah. So the Torah itself validates this point, that there is no right way and there is no wrong way to, you know, that we have permission to go through our experiences in the way that we need to. And there are several places in the Torah that validate this point, and I would like to share one with you, especially since we just, you know, not just a couple of weeks ago already, we came through Pesach. And the last day of Pesach, we went through Kiras Yamsuf and we sang Az Yashir, right? So how did Hashem split the sea for us? Did he split it in two, like the picture books, you know, Haggadahs that we used to look at as kids? No, he actually split it into 12. Picture like a swimming pool with 12 lanes. Why? Because the entire nation was going to get to the other side together. But each shevet, each brother had to go through it in his way, in the way that worked best for him. And the commentators say that those lanes, right, in the swimming pool were see-through, because each brother was going through it in his own way, but they were checking up on each other and making sure the other one was okay. You each are coming from a family, and each one has children, has members of the family. Each member of the family is different, has different personalities, different emotional makeups, different stuff that they've been through, different stuff that they're going through. Each member of the family needs to have permission, space, opportunity to go through this crisis in the way that works best for them, with no comparing one to the other. But yes, while checking up on each other. And while, yes, getting through it together as a family. But each one in their own way. How validating is that? And yes, from the Torah. It is very, very important to give ourselves permission to be human. And how do I know that? Why do I say that? Because Hashem himself gives us permission to be human. Because Hashem created us as humans. He created us with the capacity to feel, to be sad, to be scared, to be confused. Hashem gave us that permission. We need to give it to ourselves. Yes, of course, we're going to bring those feelings back to Hashem, and we're going to talk about that. But we need to give ourselves permission to be human. Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar is an Israeli psychologist who is an expert in trauma. And he talks about the fact that it is crucial to experience the full range of emotions. The sad, the angry, the confused, the scared. I don't know about you, but I find myself going through the full range of emotions like several times a day. But he says that it's very important to experience that full range because all emotions flow through one pipeline. And if you block one, you won't allow room for gratitude and joy and happiness, which are so essential all the times, but especially at a time like this. Imagine going through this type of crisis without having those moments of gratitude, without being able to experience those moments of joy and happiness. We're stuck at home. Yeah, but Baruch Hashem, we're home with our family. We had to make Pesach for the first time. Yeah, but thank God, you know what? I have a refrigerator, I have an oven, I have a credit card, I could go buy food. And amazingly, having those moments of gratitude help rewire the clutter in our brain that has been caused by loss and trauma. The feelings of gratitude, the feelings of optimism, the feelings of joy actually help to declutter the mess that has been caused in our brain caused by loss and trauma. So there's always a place, to find those moments of gratitude. And if we don't allow ourselves that full range of emotions, if we don't allow ourselves the sad, the scared, the confused, the angry, then we won't also have the moments of gratitude and joy. We just came through Pesach, and my father, Rabbi Eliyahu Safran, wrote a book on Pesach called Kos Eliyahu. And in it, he has an essay that describes Pesach as a study in contrasts. And he talks about the fact that we would not appreciate Geula, our redemption, had we not been through the Galus. We would not know light if we did not experience darkness. We wouldn't know happiness if we did not know sadness. And so many of the simanim, of the symbols that we partook at the Seder, really embody that dichotomy of emotions. The bitter maror and the sweet charoses. The men that wear a kittel that represents the tachrichim, the clothes of a dead person, but also the clothes of an angel. The matzah, which is the food of a poor person, and the wine, of a rich person, etc. So many of the symbols at the Seder. And that's what Dr. Ben-Shahar is saying. If we don't feel scared, we won't feel confused. If we don't feel scared and confused, then we're not going to feel also gratitude and happiness and joy. And if you think about, where we are now in Sfiras HaOmer, right? We have Chesed and we have Gvura and we have Tiferes, right? That dichotomy of emotions as well. So let's delve into some of these emotions and discuss them a little bit more in detail in order to help, process and deal with them. Okay, for example, fear. I believe fear is a very big part of this nisayon. Okay, this type of constant catastrophic trauma that we are all living through. Okay, and everybody is experiencing trauma on some type of level. And fear is a very big component of trauma. So every single morning, we daven in Shachris and Az Yashir, and we say very clearly that the Jews who watched the Egyptians drown were so scared that they were shaking. Tipo alehem emasa bafacha. And those were the Jews that watched it and saw it up front. Those that were standing in the back, the ones that heard it, like through texts and emails, they were also very nervous. Again, how validating is that? Hashem knows, he gets it. He puts us in situations sometimes that are scary. And he's telling us, it's okay, you're allowed to be scared. We say it every morning in Az Yashir. Again, what do we do with that fear? We're going to talk about that. I heard from my colleague, Rabbi Dr. David Fox, an amazing thought regarding Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak is known as the Pachad Yitzchak for his attribute of fear, but also for his attribute of Gvura, of strength and resilience. And when it talks about these attributes in the Psukim, it mentions Gvura once and Pachad twice. So Dr. Fox quoted the Ricanti, a 13th century Italian Rishon, who said that when Yitzchak was on the brink of the Akedah, when he was sitting there on the Mizbeach. Now, I don't know about you, but when we read that Parsha in Shul, I get a little panicky, thinking about Yitzchak sitting there on the Mizbeach with his father coming after him with a knife. He must have been panicking, right? And he actually was. He was sitting there on the Akedah, and he was Kona. He accepted upon himself the midah of pachad, of fear. He was in a state of pure terror and tension. But he consciously decided that he was going to face the fear. He was going to be present in that state of fear. And therefore, Yitzchak's gvura, his strength and his resiliency, became a healthy product of his fear, of his pachad. It does not have to be a contradiction between the fear and the strength. Fear is normal. Our fear is normal now. But the question is, what are we going to do with that fear? Are we going to sit home on the couch and shake with anxiety all day? Is that what Hashem wants from us? Can we balance the fear with emunah and with simcha, as everything in life is about balance? Can we build from it? Can we grow from it? Can we channel the fear into gvura, into strength and resiliency? Gvura can be a healthy acknowledgement of pachad. Fear is healthy and normal, but if we don't channel it into strength and resiliency, it will just remain fear. And this is a very important point to think about. Again, fear is normal. We can take out our fear and put it on the table and look at it. But if we let it just sit there and remain as fear, it will overwhelm us and overtake us and our children. And if we are able to channel it into something positive, into strength and resiliency, that can become a healthy response. A story that I always talk about when speaking about feelings and responses during or after a crisis, trauma, or tragedy is that of Sarah Imenu when she dies after learning of the Akedah. Sarah was somebody who lived her life, as Rashi says about her, kulam shavim latova. She lived her life, everything was for the good. As a mother, I try very hard to say to my kids always, it's all good, even when things don't look so good. And Sarah was somebody who really lived that way, even though she lived through a lot of challenges. So there are many commentators who ask, if that's the case, how is it that she died after the angel came and said to her, lady, do you know what's going on up on that mountain? So the first is Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, and he says that Sarah died from shock. Even though I don't know what number we're up to, 6-7 weeks into, this coronavirus, and we've lived through a lot already, who is still not in shock about what's going on? Every new illness, every new death is just very shocking. And I see it all and everything comes my way, and I still walk around and say several times a day, I can't believe what we're living through. That's shock, okay? The Sfas Emes and Rav Akiva Eger have a discussion. One of them says that Sarah died from sadness, and she actually cried out in grief. And the 6 shouts of grief that she cried out are the 6 shouts of the shofar that we're required to hear midoraisa. When we're sad, we're allowed to be sad, and when we're sad, we're allowed to express our sadness. The other one says that Sarah actually died because she was happy. Her neshama was so connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She knew that whatever was happening was Ratzon Hashem. And her neshama was just overcome with emotion, and her neshama left her. The fact that there is both teaches us one of the most important lessons when we are going through or following a crisis, a trauma, or a tragedy. And that is that our heart, both from the sides of Emunah and from the side of trauma. And that is that our heart is a muscle and is able to expand and hold more than one emotion at a time. Okay, again, our heart is a muscle and is able to expand and hold more than one emotion at a time. Very, very important. I will tell you personally that on the first Friday night, when this all began, I live in Woodmere, and that last hour before Shabbos, all of the shuls in Far Rockaway were shut down. We have a lot of friends in Far Rockaway. All of my boys, Rabbeim, live in Far Rockaway. They go to yeshiva. My kids go to school in Far Rockaway. So all of their Rabbeim live in Far Rockaway. All the Rosh Yeshivas live in Far Rockaway. A lot of our life is connected to Far Rockaway. And I went to Ben Shlecht, and I just cried and cried and cried. And they were tears of sadness, just thinking of Far Rockaway shut down on Shabbos. And they were tears of stress. And they were tears of fear, like, what is going on? And they were tears of Emunah, knowing that whatever is going on is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he loves us, and it's good, and it's going to be okay. And they were tears of hope and excitement, feeling like this is Chavlei Mashiach. And I felt very connected to Sarah Imenu, and I felt very connected to this thought that I speak about so often, that my heart was expanding and holding a lot of emotions at one time. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz also talks about the fact that Sarah died because she was all alone. Avram, Yitzchak, Eliezer were walking up to that mountain together. And even if they weren't talking about it, they were together in the experience. Sarah was told this news, and she was all alone, and she could not handle it. My friends, we are each alone in our homes, but we are not alone in our experiences. Number one, we know that we are isolated in our homes in order to protect other people, and that makes us more connected than ever. And we also know that, again, we're each alone in our homes, but we are together in this experience. Or Shlomo Katz, who I'm very close with in Eretz Yisrael, he's been doing since the beginning like a Zoom Erev Shabbos, like a Kabbalah Shabbos type of thing. And the first week, I joined on, and he had several hundred people from all over the world. And he focused the camera, at different times on different types of Jews that were joining from all over the world, really. And I found it I found myself very emotional. Like, it was very bittersweet for me. Because on the one hand, I got so sad, really, looking at all these different types of Jews, these beautiful people from all over the world who are going through the star and are going, are really, alone in all these different places. And I also found it so uplifting that all these beautiful Jews in all these different places were coming together to welcome Shabbos. So very much alone, but very much together. So how are all these feelings manifested? These feelings are manifested. We use the acronym SCABS. SCABS, S-C-A-B-S. S for somatic. Very often what we're feeling inside is manifested on the outside through your body. And again, everything I'm saying goes for children and adults. So we can be having headaches, nauseous, dizzy, rashes, loss of appetite, loss of sleep or too much sleep. C is cognitive, your thoughts or your perceptions, how you're experiencing the situation in your thoughts and perceptions. A is affect, your facial expressions, your body language. When I train volunteers to do some of the crisis work that we do in my department, so I always tell them that your facial expression and your body language say a lot more than the words that you actually speak, which is something important to think about at any time, but especially now when we're home alone with our children, and we may be feeling scared, we may be feeling anxious, we may be feeling stressed, but is that what we want to be conveying through our facial expressions and body language, or do we want to create an atmosphere? Do we want to create an atmosphere of stress and anxiety that's going to come out in our body language, or do we want to create an atmosphere, of calm, of comfort, of simcha, of menucha? There's a beautiful pasuk in Mishlei, Kamayim hapanim lepanim, kain leiv ha'adam la'adam. As water reflects a face, a heart reflects the feeling of the heart, which means that just as water reflects what you show it, so too what you feel within is felt by all. So, I think that's something so important to remember, now when we're home alone with our children at any point, but certainly, when we're discussing, anything related to this situation. A couple of weeks ago, there was an email going around our neighborhood from Dr. Jennifer Gallagher, who is the superintendent of schools in Long Beach. And her message, which she was basically trying to convey, that don't worry about how much your kids are learning or not learning right now. But the point I wanted to give over from what she said was quote, 20 years from now, your children will not remember the coronavirus or how much they learned or didn't learn during this time, but they will remember that they stayed home with you. They will tell their children about feeling safe and loved and peaceful during an anxious time. They will remember the fun things they did with you. Okay, B is behavioral. Your behavior, crying, acting out, temper tantrums, aggressive behavior in kids and adults, looking out for maladaptive behavior, any behavior that may not be the norm. Okay, the norm, your status quo, the borderline for yourself, your spouse, your kids. But at the same time, I've been saying so often, you have to remember borderline, but plus coronavirus, meaning everybody is a little bit not okay to a certain extent. Do you know what I'm saying? Everyone's emotional red flags are up. So you have to be like, okay, borderline plus coronavirus, and then, see like, it, how they're doing. People ask me all the time, about crying. Is it okay to cry in front of our children? So I always say that, like, it's okay to cry. It's just not okay to fall apart in front of your children. If you feel like you need to get hysterical, then you need to, leave the room, do your thing, and then come back. And we actually see this, it's just interesting. We see this from the Torah also. When Yosef saw his brothers for the first time, so it says at least 5 different ways that he cried. So it just shows that crying is a very healthy, normal, appropriate, emotional response. And then it actually says very, very clearly in the Psukim, when he saw them for the very first time, it says, Vayivakesh lifkos. He felt like he needed to fall apart. And if you look in the Psukim it says very clearly, Vayivakesh lifkos, and then it says he left the room, he cried, he washed his face, and then he came back. This is very, very interesting. And just another interesting thing, just to show that crying is actually an emotional response, an emotional release. There was a study done that compared the tears of a woman cutting onions to a grieving woman. And it showed that the tears of the grieving woman contained stress hormones, and the tears of a woman cutting onions did not. Okay. And then S, the final S, is spiritual, okay? Our connection to Hashem. And this is definitely affected now, and we hope only in the positive. Hashem is giving us all this time alone with him. And, you know, I keep telling my kids, telling myself, of course, but telling my kids, you know, use this time. Hashem is giving us a gift. Talk to him, communicate with him, go out in the backyard and pull a Rabbi Nachman, you know? And when you do, to keep in mind that according to Shimshon Pincus in his Sefer Sha'ar and B'Tfilah, Pathways to Prayer, there are at least 10 avenues to connect to Hashem, to talk to Hashem. Of course, there's, you know, opening a siddur and davening to Tehillim, etc. But our tears, crying is a prayer. Screaming to Hashem is a prayer. You know, whether out loud or silently in your heart. You know, falling to the ground and feeling like you can't get up is a prayer. Simply talking to God is a prayer. And there are more. So just, you know, spending time with him. You know, he's giving us this time. You know, it's a perfect opportunity to improve our relationship with him. And there was one of these like WhatsApp saying, you know, things going around that was so simple, but it was so brilliant. And it said that the Hebrew word that they're using in Israel for isolation is bidud. And the gematria for bidud is 26, which is the same gematria as Hashem. So yes, we're home alone, but we're spending time with Hashem. Okay, next is reassure. Okay, and there are different levels to reassurance. So I'm going to do the simple one first. And I spent a lot of time talking about this actually today. I did a webinar for educators, administrators, and teachers across the country. And just talking about like emotional things that they need to be really thinking about now in this virtual classroom, you know, that's going on now. So, you know, this isolation is confusing and is difficult. And we really need to validate that for ourselves and our children. And reassurance is really the ability to connect in ways that we can. And it sounds so simple what I'm about to say, but there's really so much to it. And just, you know, this Zoom ability, like, was really refuah before the Makkah. And it's not just the ability to learn so much, you know, through Zoom and the classrooms through Zoom. But I see in my own kids, you know, Baruch Hashem, B'chazei Hashem, I have kids of all ages. And, you know, grandparents being able to see kids through Zoom, just that reassurance to see them now, just to know that they're okay. You know, my youngest having play dates on Zoom, it's not just play dates, it's like seeing her friends that she misses, like just to see their faces, to know that they're okay. You know, my kids go to school in Far Rockaway, like I mentioned. So, you know, their schools, you know, before Pesach, they had the classes on the phone. And now after Pesach, you know, they have the tablets with the only Zoom thing, you know, whatever. So, so my youngest is kind of how she's in 5th grade. So on the first day, like you don't realize the first day that she had it, right, after Pesach, was the first day that she actually saw her teacher since this all began. And one of her teachers did something, I don't know if it was brilliant or because she doesn't have Wi-Fi in her house or whatever the reason is, she did the class from the actual classroom. And my daughter was so excited to see the classroom. That's reassurance. That's reassurance. It's connecting to people, it's connecting to places, it's just that connection. And it's a, you know, it's a big deal. Like we were talking today on this webinar with teachers about like closure at the end of the year. And I was really advising them, take your phone, take your computer, take your tablet, go into the classrooms, just any way that you can connect, any way that you can reassure these kids, any way that you can like visually see it. Anyways, so that's reassurance. Any way that you can connect to people, you know, in out of the box ways. You know, there's a big difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And again, this goes for all ages, and even the little ones are feeling lonely, and the big ones and the grandparents and everybody. So that's a main piece of it's a simple level, but it's a big deal of reassurance. Okay, next, reassurance. So, you know, in the beginning of the presentations, you know, when I was doing this coronavirus, I've been doing it, you know, Hashem has been having me do these presentations in the beginning So, the beginning stages, the reassurance was simply, the washing of the hands and the social distancing and following the rules, and etc. And, as things, evolved and changed, reassurance is now on a totally different level. And I will tell you like this. A couple of weeks ago, I had to do on one day, unfortunately, Hashem Yeracham, several classroom interventions regarding deaths of parents. And on one of them, a brave little boy asked that question. He said to me, how do I know that my father's not going to get coronavirus and die? And he was looking to me for reassurance. And ultimately, the only reassurance that we have for that type of question is our emunah. And we've been spending our lives learning emunah, teaching emunah, raising our children on emunah. And now is the time like never before to be living that emunah. And that's the only reassurance we have. Tzadik b'emunah yichya. Now we have to be living this emunah. And I actually was having this conversation this morning with a group of people that I learn with, and that I don't know what this nisayon is about. Nobody knows what this nisayon is about. But, to be given the opportunity to really be living the emunah that we've been learning our whole lives. And that's the only reassurance that we have. I can tell you personally that the relationship that I strive to have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one where I know that he loves me. I'm like an only child. And whatever I have going on in my life is perfect for me. But, and that for me is shleimus, and that for me is simcha. But at the same time, I understand that I don't understand. And I have, in my life things that I understand that I'll never understand. And of course, this coronavirus, is one of them. I have the great trust to teach once a week the Sefer B'Vavi Mishkan Ebna, which is a very simple but very important sefer in terms of connecting to ourselves, connecting to Hashem. And a few weeks ago, more towards the beginning of the coronavirus, so I really, I didn't know where I was having the strength to prepare and to teach, and Hashem really, gave, it was the lessons, some of the lessons that were most impactful for me and for the others. And one of them was, one of the lessons was we learned about the Chafetz Chaim, the Holy Chafetz Chaim. And when he felt a weakness in spirituality, now we don't understand what that means in terms of the Chafetz Chaim, but this is what it says in the Sefer, that when the Chafetz Chaim felt spiritually weak, what did he do? He went back and he learned the first few psukim in Bereshis, just the pshat, Bereshis bara Elokim, as Hashemayim be'esaras, Hashem's story of how he created the world, just the pshat. And why did he do that? He did it to remind himself, Yesh Borei Olam. There's a creator of the world. He has a plan. He knows what he's doing. I don't need to understand it. But he created a beautiful world, and his hashgacha is still here. And Bereshis bara Elokim, and that's all it's about. Yesh Borei Olam. And everything else, in my humble opinion, you have Rabbi Horowitz right here. He could talk a lot better about this. But everything else is a lot of noise. Yesh Borei Olam, that's it. And I think personally that there's a lot of good Torah out there, and a lot of chizuk, a lot of wonderful shiurim out there right now during this time. But there's also a lot of noise and a lot of yelling and a lot of like, you must be doing this. Stop everything and do this, or don't do this. Or, yes, do this, you're going to get corona. Don't do this, you're going to. And I just like, sometimes I just want to be like, stop, like, Yesh Borei Olam, like, that's it, that's like, that's it, just calm. And like, everybody needs to find like their reassurance and like their chizuk and, what works for them, and then be able to give over to their children, kind of like on the airplane when you have to put the oxygen mask on themselves first and then give it over to their children. But, what the reassurance that I would like to give to you tonight is the Chofetz Chaim and the story of Bereshis and Yesh Borei Olam. Okay, next, moving on, reframe. I'm going to tell you a quick, intense, but very powerful reframe. First, what is a reframe? A reframe is a very simple but powerful psychological tool that I use all the time in my work, and that's the ability to look at something from a different side, a different angle. Okay, and there's always the ability to reframe. So remember, I was crying by my Shabbos candles that Friday night. So I came to the Shabbos table and I was telling my kids about my tears, sadness, stress, fear, emunah, hope, excitement, Chavlei Mashiach. So again, Baruch Hashem, my kids of all ages. So my son, who had just turned 12, said, so I was saying to them, Chavlei Mashiach, that, it's going to be hard and difficult and confusing before Mashiach comes, but it's Hashem, Mashiach's Mom. So my 12-year-old said, but the Holocaust also was confusing and difficult. I said, yeah, you're right. And the conversation kind of changed. And that Sunday was when we found out that school was going to be closed till Pesach. Little did we know then, but okay, that's besides the point. So that Sunday when my kids heard, they were like, it's not fair, we're not going to see our friends. So, I validated, and then I said, but you know what? I said, on Shabbos, you were talking about the Holocaust. I said, it seems to me that we're going to be stuck at home, but we're going to have each other, and you're going to have your bikes, and you're going to have your games, and there aren't going to be any Nazis telling you what to do, and we're not going to be in the concentration camps, and I think it might be okay. And they were like, yeah, okay, Ima, fine, we get it, And that was our reframe. Okay, next, we're almost done. Express. Everybody, every adult, every child needs a mode of expression. Always, but especially in this trauma. Okay, this is too big. Okay, there's no, trauma does not go away. Okay, even now when we are still amidst it, before it's over, it has to be expressed. One of my favorite lines regarding expression and children is that a monster without a name or a shape is very scary. But once you give a monster a name, it becomes less scary. Naming the monster, giving clarity to emotions, labeling emotions leads to better anxiety management. So how do we do that? Talking is ideal, for sure. Talking is ideal. It's definitely the best form of expression. So again, just going back to Pesach, Paro, Mitzrayim, Avdus, right? Slavery represents Gullus Dibor. Our speech was in exile. What is the antidote to that? The antidote is coming to the Seder, and we have Magid, naming the monster, telling the story, talking about the slavery. And how do we do that? By the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. The word Sipur comes from the word sapir. A sapir is an illuminating light. When we tell our story, when we talk about our trauma, it helps transform our darkness to light. Okay? So not everybody is a talker. You can write, there's a lot of other forms of expression. Sherry Mendel, who she herself is a writer, she made Aliyah many years ago, and her son Kobe cut school one day with a friend, and unfortunately he was killed by a terrorist. And she wrote 2 excellent books, The Blessings of a Broken Heart and The Road to Resilience. And she does some amazing things with the Hebrew language. She says that the shoresh, the root for the word atzuv, sad, is the same for atzvus, creation. And also the shoresh for the word bria, creation, is the same as the shoresh for the word briut, health. When we channel our passions, our emotions, our feelings into creating something, into a creation, into making something positive, then that promotes better emotional health. Okay, so we must find a mode of expression. And that, of course, we can throw in there self-care. Okay, we have to find a way to take care of ourselves, some moments for ourselves, and that's, could be another hour presentation, but I know for myself, just the days that I get out and just take a walk, is a better day for me. To just find something, and again, with the Zoom, with the online, there's so many options. And finally, the last one is empower. Okay, we need to find the nekuda tova, the good spot, that little bit of light in the darkness in every single person, child and adult, so that they can be empowered to face the situation. Rabbi Nachman's entire Torah of Azamra is what? Is finding the nekuda tova in every person. And his entire Torah of Azamra is based on the small aleph in Vayikra. What is the Sefer of Vayikra about? Karbanos, sacrifices. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash now to bring karbanos. So our yisurim, our difficulties, our challenges, and our efforts are our karbanos today. And when we go through a challenge, when we experience a karban, we must find the nekuda tova in ourselves, in our spouses, in our children. We must find the small aleph. We must find the azamra. I know this is really hard for you. I know it's frustrating to be in isolation for so long. And I'm so proud that you're doing A, B, and C. I'm so proud of the way you're handling it. I will end by saying the following. We're going through a major nisayon together, a challenge, a difficulty, a hardship. And that's a nisayon, nun, samach, yud, vav, nun. In every nisayon is a little word nis. First, we have to validate that it's a nisayon. This is really hard. And the greatest tefillah that we can say at this point is, Hashem, this is really hard. I'm having a hard time. Please help me, help Klal Yisrael get through this. We have to validate that it's a nisayon. And the next step is to look for and to find the nes in the nisayon. What's a nes? A nes is first and foremost a miracle. The miracles are there. We know that they are. We have to just open our eyes and find them. How is Hashem helping us through this? How is Hashem holding our hands through this? How is Hashem guiding us? How is Hashem hugging us? A nes is also a banner. And a banner is something that lifts us up. And we all know there will be such a shame if when we are done with this, Be'ezras Hashem, we are not lifted up in some way. As individuals, as communities, as Klal Yisrael. And I just want to give us all a bracha that we have the ability, that we have the schus to find the nes in this nisayon, and that be'ezras Hashem very soon we will be zocha to the ultimate nes, the refuah, the Yeshua, the geula, and Emeretz Hashem, Rabbi Horowitz will be leading us and doing avodas hakodesh in Yerushalayim Havnuya. And I just want to, if I could just say that if our department can be of any help to you at any point, we can be reached at 855-3-CRISIS. That's 855-3-CRISIS, or crisis@highlifeline.org. And if I may, I just want to add that I'm Zocha Baruch Hashem through Yeshiva Atar Shimon in Far Rockaway to do a short daily message of inspiration and chizuk based on the worlds of Torah and psychology every day. It goes through email or WhatsApp. You could read it or listen to it. And if you want to sign up for that, you can either email soulsisters@atarashimon.org. I could put it in the chat. soulsisters@atarashimon.org, or text 516-404-7594, 516-404-7594.
Can I just, that was so inspiring, and thank you so much. It was on so many different levels. It was so helpful. Thank you. Can I just ask a couple of questions, if I may?
Please do.
On behalf of the people who've been emailing and sending questions, thank you again. Thank you so very much for your time, for your effort. I told you at the beginning, and I've told you this many times, I don't know how you do it. Hashem should give you mazel and bracha, really, to be able to help. You help us all when we're in our most vulnerable times, and that's really remarkable. You mentioned about naming the monster. I assume that you mean on a practical level to talk to the children about exactly what's going on. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, like I said in the very beginning, when I like the analogy of, when we read kids a story and we don't have an ending. Right. Think about it as an adult. When there are unanswered questions, it causes more stress. So we have to bring that down for a kid level. Like, obviously we're not going to share all, unnecessary details, with kids, but at the same time, kids are very perceptive. They know the atmosphere in the house. They read the body language. We can't leave things open-ended. Like, we need to be able, we have to share with them, enough that they have something to hold on to. Again, a monster without a name is very scary. When you give a monster a name, at least it's something I can hold on to. It's something I can put a name to. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I absolutely. I understood that what you were saying. I was just asking about clarification in terms of our own takeaway messages. So you're suggesting that we do speak to our children about it, in a way that's appropriate for them. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about is, our children are all married, Baruch Hashem, but having children of different ages in the house, and they wind up talking to each other about each one of them, what they had each heard. Should parents be telling the children, come to me if you have any questions about this, so that they can explain it to them on their level?
So first of all, lines of communication have to be wide open, that's for sure. And that's part of what I said. You need to really have these family conversations, and you need to check in with the kids and find out what they know, and tell them whatever you're hearing, you need to bring it back to mommy, and whatever questions you have, bring it back. Lines of communication have to be wide open, transparency, open, honest communication. There's no secrets, you know what I'm saying? And make it kind of like a joke. Like, we're all living here together in the same house, you know what I'm saying? Like, everything's just out in the open, like, there's no secrets here, you see me at my best, you see me at my worst, you see me without my makeup, you see me, all I'm saying, like, there's just no secrets here. Like, when I had my conversation with my kids, we did it all together, all ages, and and I was very honest, you know, I did it in a developmentally appropriate way, but, you know, my kids, you know, heard that, you know, there was a very major shift in this coronavirus, meaning going from like thinking something was just like the flu and, you know, whatever, to a shift of like, Hashem Yeracham, there are people, you know, there are people dying. So, you know,
thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I appreciate it. You were kind enough to give the number and said that, you know, it was very gracious of you, as you always are, to be available for everyone. How's someone supposed to know? We're all feeling kind of disoriented. Like how I had a woman called me about this. She was going through anxiety, and she wanted to know, in terms of like, when do you know it's time to go for help? That's my question, really. How do you take your own temperature if every one of us on this call and everyone everywhere is feeling stress? How do you know, at what point do you know that you don't have the tools to deal with this on your own? This is not average. Maybe you could help me out with that.
So I'm going to answer that in two ways. Number one is, I think that everybody needs somebody to talk to right now. And I don't mean a therapist necessarily. I mean that what we are experiencing is something so totally unprecedented. And I'm going to repeat, and I don't mean to sound negative. Like, I think, you know, Baruch Hashem, there's so much positivity and there's so much emunah, and like, as with Hashem Yisbarach, like we're gonna get through this, and like Mashiach's gonna be on the other end, and we're all gonna be, you know what I'm saying, we're gonna grow and this and that, you know what I'm saying? But we are all experiencing trauma on some level. There's no question, you know, and there is, I don't think there's anybody who is going through this who doesn't need to reach out to somebody at some point. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about my crisis line right now. I'm just talking stam, you know? And I'm actually hearing from my volunteers who man the crisis line, because they do become like those people in the community who are seen as like go-tos, and people are calling them. Can I just ask you, what do you think about this? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like the community needs a hug. Rabbi Horowitz, you're a good hugger for the community. You know what I'm saying? And I honestly, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I think that every single community needs to set up not a crisis hotline, like a support hotline. Just, we're here. You know what I'm saying? Ki ish echad b'lev echad. We're doing this together. So that's on one level. Our crisis hotline is more for like, okay, you know what? My baseline plus coronavirus, I think I'm like up here. You know what I'm saying? Like, my coping mechanisms that I usually put into place are not working. And, you know, I really need support in whatever it is, whatever area of crisis that, you know, I'm facing right now. A crisis, you know, if you look at, you know, your iPhone dictionary, the definition of a crisis is anything that disrupts, one of the three definitions of crisis is anything that disrupts your normal mode of functioning. Okay, that's very nice. Then we
check that one.
Exactly. A crisis becomes a trauma a few different ways. We have no prior experience. The way we perceive it and think about it, meaning two people can go through the same car accident and one can come out and be like, okay, thank you, Hashem, like, that was fun, you know, that whatever. And the other person can come out and be like, oh my gosh, that was so traumatizing, you know? And the third way is if your normal coping mechanisms are just they're not working, right? So I'm going with that third, you know, like, okay, nothing's working right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm doing my breathing. I did my Tehillim. I call my best friend and she can't help me. I don't, whatever, plug in your own details. You know what I'm saying? And you really feel like, okay, I really need help.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. In other words, the normal coping mechanisms, if I'm understanding you correctly, Mrs. Farbman, what you're saying is that if at some point that the normal coping mechanisms don't seem to be working at all, then it's time to reach out either to a friend, and if that's not working, to go for professional help. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One last thing, if I may. Thank you again so much for your time. I don't want to take any more of your time, but
No problem.
I did get a few messages today about.
I'm going to type in those numbers while you ask that last question. Okay.
Go for it. Sure. Type in which numbers? The
numbers that I said.
Oh, sure. Please, by all means.
But keep talking.
Yeah. So I did get some messages about things getting, there's been a lot of stress and a lot of media attention to the issue of social distancing and people who live, especially, if you're living right in the middle of our community, it's really not affecting them that much. But it seems that the people on the outside of the community living in more mixed neighborhoods are feeling a certain sense of ugliness. And sometimes it gets very stressful. A few people reached out and asked about, like, how should they discuss this with their children? What should they say? Do you have any suggestions or any, according to what you're saying about naming it, they should maybe sit down and have a chat with their kids directly about it. How should, what would you suggest? Now, there's one person actually, someone came over and started filming them to see if they comply, whatever. It was totally over the top. I'm not saying within the realm of what's appropriate, but how could parents deal with their children and talk to them? The kids get very rattled by it. And like, how should the parents speak to their children? Does name demands to work for that also? You sit down and you say, any thoughts?
So I think it very much depends on the age, I think, with that. I think with the older kids, having a more honest conversation, name the monster, that type of thing. I think part of that also is a little bit just worrying about ourselves, like, meaning, like, we know we're doing the right thing. We have to focus on following the directions. That's, the type of, like, Ace of Sona as Yakov, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's, I don't live in your neighborhood, so I don't know if this is like a normal, if those types, if the outskirts are like constantly bothering you, is that?
No, in other words, the backstory is that we all know that the vast overwhelming percentage of the people in our community are following social distance guidelines. And there is a small minority of folks who aren't, but since we're an identifiable minority, this winds up becoming public, and everyone.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. So this is this. Maybe I wasn't clear. I didn't want to be clear at the beginning, but obviously I have to name it also. So what happens is a lot of great, decent people who've been doing exactly what they should have been doing all along. The assumption is made by others that they're not, and it gets, everybody's lumped into a group, and it has reached the point where many kids are feeling traumatized by all the churn that's going on around that. That was the messages that I was asked to give over for direction. So the children are confused. They see the anxiety in the parents. Sometimes, words, sometimes it gets a little heated between the neighbors, and people start saying, you people, there are people who act out in all communities. So, but how should a parent respond to that? The children see that the parents are rattled and upset. The kids get aggravated. How do you, that was the question that I was asked to.
Okay, got it. Okay. So number one, I want to go back to the scabs and to the A, and to, like, really highlight the affect, and to really, really, really try to focus on the affect, and remember how important that is, and that your facial expressions, your body language, and obviously what's coming out of your mouth, how strongly impactful that's going to be on your children. And especially now, like what I said before, everybody is a little bit not okay. Everybody's emotions are heightened. Everybody is extra sensitive. Everybody, kids and adults, everyone's red flags are just a little bit up, so, everyone's going to be a little bit anxious, and an anxious kid is going to be a little bit more anxious. You know what I'm saying? So like, we have to be like uber careful, like really uber careful about whatever it is that's going on. But so that's a lechatchila, like that has to be the starting point. I think the honest conversation has to really be, and I think every neighborhood is facing what you're facing, but maybe not on the same level. You know what I'm saying? We had one small incident here where, just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, whatever, there was a small shtibel who had a small minion, and it was in the papers, and it was, like, it's whatever, it's a major chilul Hashem, and like everyone else is following the rules, and it's like, really, like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? I think the conversation has to be exactly that in every, like, take it down to the kid level. You know how, like, in every class there's going to be that bully,
That's a very good way. That's a very interesting way of saying it. It's very child-centered. Yeah, thank you.
In every community there's going to be those couple of families that are just like, everyone knows, like, they're just not nice, stay away from them. In every shul there's going to be those few people. Like, in every place, you're never going to have a perfect kehillah. No place ever. That's Gan Eden. So too in our community, and most of the people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. B'chazdei Hashem, that alone is an ace. Most of the people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and are following the rules, and ashreichem, and it's so hard. And look how long people are really following the rules and are patient and are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we are, the most important thing is we have to worry about ourselves and our family. But, there are those few people who are just nuts, who are not behaving, who are not following the rules, who are being the bully. Yes. And that there's nothing else to say. That's the mitzias.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I want to thank you on a personal level for what you've done for our yeshiva when we called upon you for our summer camp. I was in a summer camp. I called upon you years ago. And I'm sure all of us, those of us who deal with people, in positions where we impact lives, are very, very grateful to you. Thank you for your time tonight, Hashem. You're shliach tzibur in some ways for dealing with Klal Yisrael's pain. You need a special bracha for strength. So Hashem should give you strength and continue your amazing, amazing work. And good night, everyone. I hope you found this helpful. It'll be posted up on YouTube later. If anybody else, if anybody asks you want to recommend it to someone, it'll be up on YouTube. They can just look up under Yakov Horowitz under my channel. We have all the talks that we've been doing this week are there. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir. So.
Yeah.